Digital
First Podcast. Shaping the future of informatics education in primary and secondary schools.
So, welcome everybody to the first episode of Digital First Podcast, where we explore the intersection of technology, education, and the next generation. The Digital First project is on a mission to reshape the future of informatics education in primary and secondary schools across Europe, to match the needs of today's children born in a digital world. With 15 partners, we are set to develop and test innovative pedagogical approaches to informatics education in 11 European countries over the coming months. In our podcast series, we are hosting teachers, parents, policymakers, and experts on education and technology who are in the forefront of this educational transformation and try to answer together an essential question. What kind of informatics education should we envision for today's kids, the so-called digital natives? Our goal is to understand how we can bridge the gap between traditional education and the digital world, preparing young minds not just to consume technology, but to innovate and lead in the digital age. So, if you're a teacher, a parent, a student, or just someone passionate about the future of education and technology, stay tuned as we embark on this journey to make digital tech the first language for our digital natives. I'm your host, Petra, from the Digital Education Service of the Slovenian Ministry of Education, and I'm really thrilled to have you with us in this exciting conversation today. So, on today's podcast, where we are diving into the essential role of informatics education in preparing students for the future, informatics is no longer just about coding. It's about understanding data, technology, and problem solving in a digital world. Thank you for everybody again for joining us today, and thanks to our guests. We are very delighted to have with us Eugenia Casariego, an expert from European SchoolNet, with us today to share her insights on the importance of empowering teachers to teach informatics. And it is a very great pleasure also to have Uroš Ocipek, a secondary school teacher, as our guest to share his unique perspectives as someone who teaches informatics to inquisitive minds on a daily basis. Hello, Eugenia and Uroš, and welcome to the first Digital First podcast.
Hi.
Hello.
So nice to have you here. If we start our podcast today, and just as an opening question to both of you, actually, why do you think informatics is so crucial for students, for young people today in today's world? Eugenia, can you start, please?
Absolutely. And first of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure to start this conversation with the both of you. So basically, for me, I think it's important to prepare young people to converse with a world that is already full of technology, that is already there and very present. And it's beyond that as well. And as you mentioned, Petra, learning informatics is also a tool to develop crucial skills that will be very important for young people in their future, such as problem solving, critical thinking, resilience, but also debugging, and also computational thinking. So it goes beyond just learning informatics and beyond learning hard skills. It goes to the learning soft skills as well. But also for me, it's also important to foster in young people the mentality of, let's say, learning for the future, in the sense that I think learning informatics gives young people an idea that we live in a world where technological advances are constantly shifting and changing, and there's a need to continuously adapt and learning to learn. So in a nutshell, I think this is why it's important.
Thank you. Uroš?
Yes, I agree with Eugenia. Technology is embedded everywhere, in every room, in our houses, and I believe soon or lately that we will have technology integrated in our bodies, like in TV show called Black Mirror, I guess. So for these reasons, it's important to introduce us informatics to our children, and also to expand their knowledge about the technology, to build their skills, and also to spark their curiosity.
Very good. Thank you. I completely agree with both of you regarding the young people, of course. But if we, for example, also focus on teachers, Eugenia, if I ask you, what do you think are the biggest challenges the educators face in teaching informatics, and how can we support them in overcoming them?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. I think this is really important. And in my conversation with teachers, I have to say that one of the first hurdles is the amount of work that they have. So basically, teachers are overworked. And on top of, and perhaps Uros can tell us more here, of course, I do not want to take your voice from you. But one thing I heard is this issue of being overworked. So on top of the normal workload of a teacher that is already quite heavy, they are expected to develop their digital competencies and digital skills and to seek professional development opportunities. So that can be a little bit tricky as well. And also, I would say that another challenge is, and it's also a bit the logic behind the Digital First project, right? And is that students are digital natives, as you yourself mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. They already come to school with these digital skills. They already have knowledge. And sometimes what I hear from teachers is that there's a little bit of a disconnect between them and the students, in the sense that sometimes there's a fear that students are a moment in front of them. And I think that there's a very clear solution to that. And it's just that providing students with peer learning opportunities, with projects that they can develop on their own, and also with hands-on projects. And well, I didn't mention solutions to teachers being overworked, and I think there's a very complex kind of issue to tackle. But I think one possible solution is already what your project is offering, these networks of teachers that support each other and encourage them to learn together, such as the dialogue clubs that you are aiming to establish, for example, and all of these networks. I think this is really important to let teachers know that they are not alone in learning digital skills, developing their own competencies. But I'm very curious to hear what Urush has to say as well on this.
Uroš, some insights
Yeah,
from your side?
yeah, I think that the most important thing is that a teacher is generally enjoys in presenting such topics, informatics. And also, I think that the most important thing is that we teachers can give such technology in the classroom, and the classroom should be a safe place to explore, to research, and also to innovate something new.
And how actually do you introduce teaching informatics? You do teach that to your students. How do you make it more interactive and, of course, innovative?
First of all, I'm trying to be honest and to say my students that I don't have all the answers about the technology, especially from the field of artificial intelligence, although I did have a PhD from that field. I'm trying to give technologies such as VR, AR, XR, and so on, to try to explore. And also, I'm focused on the topics of interest of my students. For example, since my students are familiar with the world of computer games, I'm often using gaming to explain some complex thing, maybe from the field of programming, oriented programming. For example, I present objects as characters, items, robots, and so on. And I think this makes programming easier to understand and also some things to visualize.
Digital
Now, so Eugenia, you already mentioned the projects and everything that that teachers try to sort of participate in, and to keep them on one hand, of course, in touch with the current developments and the trainings and everything. But how can we additionally support them, especially regarding their workload and things that they are trying to keep up with everything? Uroš also mentioned the current very strongly influenced, the AI is sort of interfering. What are these additional sort of supporting other mechanisms or initiatives, or maybe also trainings, if we want to mention at this point during the podcast, so to keep the teachers supported and their informatic lessons relevant and, of course, engaging?
Yeah, this is a very relevant question, and I will divide it by levels, right? So starting from the bottom, at teacher level, I think it's important, as you mentioned, to rely on professional development opportunities, such as the courses you mentioned. I'm aware that All Digital has a wonderful academy with very interesting courses for educators. At European Schoolnet, we have the European Schoolnet Academy that periodically launches MOOCs, massive open online courses tailored for educators. So this is a great place to start, I think, to be aware that there are possibilities to continue their professional development is a great place to start. And as we mentioned as well through this podcast, it's also important at the teacher level to rely on networks and to rely on each other. And I think we'll talk more about it in a minute. But I think it's also from a teacher perspective, and when it comes to support, is to find support on each other, to understand that we don't necessarily need to work in silos, that we can rely and learn from other teachers at the school, but also in other schools and also internationally as well. So this is the first point of support that I would mention, just these international communities that can serve to further engage and inspire. But of course, you can take it as well a step further. And if I'm going up the ladder in a way, so at the school level, what I think it's very important is for the school leadership to be involved as well in professional development. So for school leadership to be supportive of the teacher's professional development, to provide a space, and I'm not just talking of a physical space, but also in the schedule and in workload. And I think this is a key issue. And as well, it's important for the school leadership to provide support in terms of guidelines and support and material. So for the teachers to not work alone. So Uroš mentioned something very important, which is the need to navigate technology and especially tools like artificial intelligence, AI, safely. And here's where the school leadership has a role for the teacher to not work alone and not try to guess what's right, what's wrong, what's ethical, what's according to school missions or not. It's very important for the school leadership to be involved there and provide these guidelines and to provide this support that the teacher may need on how to safely use technology and how to actually practically bring an innovative approach to introducing technology and informatics in the classroom. And we can continue also a step further and talk about the regional/national level. And I think this is really important here for authorities to provide opportunities for professional development to teachers who are already outside training. So those teachers who are not currently studying, who have already been in the profession for 10, 20, 30 years. And this is something I hear often from teachers like, oh, I already finished my studies maybe 20 years ago. And now I feel like I'm in this limbo where continuing learning is completely up to me. And I don't feel supported very often by regional authorities. So for example, I'm talking here of compensating professional development opportunities and acknowledging and seeing this as part of the professional development of teachers. And also from a national level to support the schools in developing an IT infrastructure that is sound, that is reliable, that is not necessarily the top of the level or incredibly innovative, but just IT infrastructure at the school that is competitive, that does not rely on outdated computers and that has the very basic things that the students need. Again, I'm not talking that every school should have like a digital board that is in the classroom and have the latest licenses for AI tools. I'm just talking of the very basics that help teachers and students converse safely with technology in a way that is not outdated, in a way that reinforces the students' kind of motivation to continue learning and learning from technology. And also you mentioned the European level, and I think this is really important. And last but not least, I think it's important from a European level to provide some guidance and guidelines. And here's where the European Commission comes in really handy. You may be aware that just last year, the Commission published the guidelines on the ethical use of AI in the classroom. 2 further guidelines are being also prepared right now, guidelines for the use of or how to better teach high quality informatics across the curriculum that I'm very excited to see coming. And as well, there's the guidelines on digital education content and how to better navigate it in the classroom as well. So I think from the European level, there's also a very clear role and mandate to support teachers at a very ground level and to help with these guidelines, with these directives. And as well, let's not forget projects like the one that brings us together here. I think from a European perspective, this is also a very great place of supporting teachers, educators, and schools, of course, and ultimately students. So, yeah.
You put it so well. Thank you very much, especially in the levels part. Thank you for emphasizing and so segmenting. Of course, it's important from the teacher perspective, from the management of the school perspective, the European level, and of course, these kind of cooperation. I think from our standing point, for example, as a ministry participating in these kind of projects is always important for us. The exchange, so the exchange of practices, the exchange of information, the exchange of how we are implementing, especially these new trends that are coming in and are, of course, changing swiftly the landscape of teaching in general and, of course, of informatics. Uroš, 2 very short questions regarding this. So on one hand, how do you think, how would you sort of put into wording the cooperation between teachers and the support in this segment. What do you see, what do you feel is most relevant in this context?
I think that we need to collaborate, not just in the regional level or in school level, but also outside the countries. Regarding of my success, a Global Teacher Prize ambassador, I'm trying to connect to other teachers to see what they are working on. I know some have other difficulties with technology. Some of them are in the futuristic future way. So I think it's very important to see and also to meet in person to share our ideas and to collaborate and maybe to do some project inside Europe Union for our children, for our teachers and schools, of course.
Yeah, it is. Cooperation is, of course, very, very much important. At this point, I would just shortly like to mention and ask you, Eugenia, just a couple of words about the EU Code Week that recently finished. So what is there on one side for the teachers emphasized, and on the other hand, of course, for the students participating?
Right. So EU Code Week is an initiative launched by the European Commission more than 10 years ago right now. It encourages teachers and students to learn more about technology and also to realize the creative side of dealing with technology. It provides an amazing supportive network, international one, by volunteer teachers who are engaged in technology, who are motivated to exchanging good practices. So it definitely echoes what Uros just mentioned, the importance of international collaboration and networks of teachers. So it's a great place to start learning about technology and helping your students learn about technology. And one thing that I really love about Code Week is that wherever you are in your digital learning journey, in your digital competencies kind of framework, wherever you are, you can already get started and teach your students about technology. And I think that's great because you can already go to the website, find amazing resources, learning materials, and lots of information, and you can already get started on your coding journey, but also technology journey. Yeah.
And Uros, just to sort of directly connect with this, so what do you think, what are the key problem solving skills that studying informatics learners develop? And how do these skills then translate into non-technical fields?
Yes, these skills are valuable not only for future computer technicians in our case, because I'm a vocational teacher, but also across all professions. Because I think that the most important skill is problem solving in daily basis. And by applying, for example, algorithmic thinking, students can achieve to innovate, to maybe be creative, and maybe to create something futuristic, for example. And at the same time, this approach can benefit chemists, mathematicians, artists, musicians, because this helps them to enhance their creativity and also to integrate technology to elevate their fields of interest.
Yeah, it is. We also, I mean, from the ministry perspective, also speaking, it is of crucial importance to learn and to teach in informatics. We do want our kids, our future citizens, to be able to make comprehensive and, of course, participate in a society that currently is more or less digital driven. So thank you in this segment. Eugenia, if we build on the importance of training for teachers, and of course, one of the aspects that we are also developing here in the Digital First project, so trying to be innovative, to offer teachers support, to create a collaboration, a network that would support teachers and of course give them space where they can interact, where they can exchange ideas, how to tackle, of course. What do you say? You already mentioned in your previous responses, but how could we strengthen this cooperation, and what are the main benefits of these kind of projects, of these kind of corporations? What do you, for example, do in the EU SchoolNet with your partners?
Right. So I think the very first benefit of that, it's just the integration of different perspectives, right? So if we want to bring innovation in education, but also in how we teach informatics, we need different perspectives from the minister level, but also in the industry level, but also European level, and also at teachers level, obviously. And this is something that we also do at European SchoolNet. We have also this ecosystem that is called the Future Classroom Lab, where we make also this effort of bringing different perspectives, different stakeholders. We bring them together to discuss innovation in education. So when you ask me, or when I think, what's one of the benefits of these networks, I think this multidisciplinary but also multidimensional understanding of innovation in education is definitely one of those key things, and is definitely one of the ways in which we try to bring innovation to education. So ultimately, we're a network of ministries of education, and this is what European SchoolNet is, and we bring value to them and to our mission of innovating education by bringing together this community. But also, I see as well that there's another advantage there, which is just pooling resources and pooling expertise and pooling different perspectives as well on what is needed and where we should be going. So that's definitely another very important aspect of that. And let's not forget as well about creating lasting networks. And I think this is really important. I mentioned at the beginning as well that it's just key not to work in silos and not to work alone. So I think definitely that's another great point of collaboration, is just that we create lasting networks and lasting reliability, and we advance together. I think it's important when we talk of innovating education, of bringing technology into the classroom, it's just to think that, okay, we're not just doing this alone, because then if not, we keep doing the very same things in parallel and maybe even making mistakes. But just when we work together is the way to advance together, to learn from each other, and to really eventually be more innovative, be more forward, be more courageous. And it echoes a little bit as well the ground level that we talked about a minute ago, right? About teachers coming together, is the way as well that we advance, and is the way as well that we engage and motivate each other. So very briefly, I think that's about it.
Yes, the cooperation, I think never before has been so important, especially because of the swift changes that actually the current trends in education are sort of a giving way. So it is, yes, the cooperation, the networks, as you mentioned, they're all of crucial importance, especially for the teachers not to feel sometimes alone and so burdened by everything that's going on. And Uroš, what would you say, or what are the resources or tools, for example, that have been most helpful to you in your teaching informatics effectively?
Yes, for me, it was essential to explore, for example, computer science unplugged activities in order to explore and also to teach when we are not using technology as computers, mobiles, and so on. And this approach also highlights the distinction between informatics and digital skills, digital literacy, because I think it's also important to say that informatics covers the concepts, skills, knowledge, and also about using computer science, whereas digital skills focus on using technology for daily use. And maybe I can suggest to teachers also to stay updated, to explore websites, maybe, I don't know, some profiles on LinkedIn and so on. Personally, I'm particularly interested in artificial intelligence, and one site I find valuable for staying current is Hacker News. So maybe advice for you.
Thank you for sharing. In closing notes for our first podcast, Eugenia, if I may ask you also, so Uroš already offered some key points from your side. What would you say, how can learning about informatics help young people in their everyday lives, not just with technology?
Well, I think it will let them converse with a world that is already, as we mentioned at the beginning, full of technology. I think it's also really important to understand, for them to understand where we're going and to understand that we live in a shifting world. And it's also important, if we start at the school, is the way that we can set good practices. We mentioned through the podcast how important it is for young people to interact safely with technology, and I cannot stress this enough. So I think if we start already at the school, setting good practices of how they can be safe online. And here there's multiple resources for teachers to learn safe internet practices, such as, for example, the project that we have at European SchoolNet, Better Internet for Kids. It's a great place to start. So I think this is one of the reasons why I think teaching informatics early on is just to set the good practices. It's the same as, for example, when you're learning to play an instrument. If you already learn the good way that you can position your hands, that you can just deal with the instrument is much better moving forward, because you're already going to get some good patterns and some good behaviors around using that instrument. So that's definitely one of them. And also Uroš mentioned having fun and dealing with technology in a way that is courageous and that it's entertaining. And I think that's another point why they can benefit from learning from technology early on. It's just, it's fun. There's so much to learn. But also from my perspective, there's another element there, which is the element of agency. And I've always advocated for the importance of a student's agency and a student's responsibility for their own learning. And I definitely think that informatics is a key thing in developing a student's agency. It allows them to be independent in their own learning, to seek their own sources of knowledge, and to deal with the responsibility of their own learning. And I think informatics is really important there for them to be the agents of their own learning, for them to drive their own knowledge. And I think this is where really learning how to deal with technology, learning how to use AI, as we've mentioned, it's also really important, because it really empowers them to move forward their own learning and to take responsibility from basically the products of their own learning. So just a closing note as well here, that of course we need to be very watchful of shortcomings and pitfalls and ethical concerns of students dealing with the AI especially, but with technology in general. So I have a positive message, but also one that is a bit cautious, but an encouraging one. I think it's really important to jump early on. I was having a conversation with a teacher some time ago, and they said something that I really found interesting, and I think it really summarizes this early on. And they were telling me that it's important to take the train early on and not try to catch it like 5 stations down the line where it's already a bit too late, So I think this is the last message I have to say, is that it's important to jump early on, to start from the beginning, to start with very small things. Of course, you don't necessarily need to start by already, or your students don't necessarily already need to become so competent that they develop their own AI-powered chatbot. It can start way smaller than that. Uroš mentioned unplugged coding. Fantastic. I think this is a great place to start. So basically, I think that's it in a nutshell. Start, be aware of the shortcomings, but also for young people, I think it has so much to offer. So I definitely encourage them to become their own, to continue their journey that already started from a young age. As you mentioned, Petra, they are already digital natives, so they already have the skills. So continue on.
Thank you. And Uroš, from your side, a selling point. So teachers usually, when we talk about informatics, not usually, they only focus on coding and on the technical part. How would you sell it? Why should we emphasize the importance of teaching informatics?
Yeah, of course, the most important thing is that they are open-minded to technology, that they are not afraid of technology. They need to nurture their inner child to explore, to research. This is very important. And maybe I can give you my favorite quote which is also related to my teaching. And it says that the true aim of civilization is not the advancement of machines or science, but of humanity. And this is very important.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Digital
So let's take a moment to reflect on the highlights of today's conversation. One of the standout points from our discussion with Uroš was why it is so important nowadays to teach students informatics, especially in an innovative and interactive way. As Uroš said, he's trying to give his students the opportunity to explore different technologies, such as VR, XR, etc. He emphasized that it is important to listen to students and their interests in order to persuade them to learn. The key takeaway here is that with the right approaches, teachers can make lectures more fun and enable students to develop their strong points, and of course, to keep their curiosity and minds open. Another significant highlight was Eugenia's insight into what is important to cooperate in such projects with other teachers and organizations. She stated that it is important to have such groups of teachers where they can learn, interchange ideas, and let them know that they are not alone in this. The main insight here is that it is important to give teachers the opportunity to grow and interexchange ideas as well as practices and perspectives, so that they can give students multidimensional understanding of topics. Eugenia and Uroš shared valuable insights on teaching informatics. The essential point here is, of course, to prepare and empower young people For a world that is full of new technologies, it is important to teach them how to use them, how to communicate through them, and to help them understand how they work in order for them to use it safely and responsibly. This illustrates why it is so important to teach our students informatics today. Thank you very much to both of you. Thank you, Eugenia and Uroš, for your presence here today with us on our first Digital First podcast. Your experiences and insights are absolutely of much help and, of course, very much valued in our mission of our project also to reshape the informatics education in today's world. And dear listeners, thank you very much for joining us today on this Digital First podcast. Stay tuned for more conversations that are shaping the future of informatics education. If you enjoyed this episode, which I'm quite sure you did as much as we did, please don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter on our website and to follow our project, Digital First Network, on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook to hear about upcoming podcasts, videos, and webinars. So until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep innovating. Thank you very much.
Digital First Podcast. Shaping the future of informatics education in primary and secondary schools.